Welcome to the World Kitchen. As a church, we are excited to offer this program, and we really hope that it's an opportunity for us to not only learn about another country, but it's an opportunity to cook together in the kitchen, and then also to hear a little bit about what the Presbyterian Church USA is doing around the world. So, would you join your hearts with mine in prayer? God, we thank you for the opportunity, even during a time like this, to gather together, to cook, and to learn more about your work in the world. I pray that as we cook and as we learn, that we would be drawn to others, and that we would lift them in prayer, and that we would think about what you're doing in the world through the Presbyterian Church. Thank you for this gift. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hi, I'm Jan Blackwell, a member of our Mission and Social Action team.
This month, we heard from the Reverend Paula Cooper, Presbyterian Church's World Missions Regional Liaison from East Central Africa, which includes Rwanda, Kenya, Malawi, and Zambia. The Presbyterian Church USA and Presbyterian Church of Rwanda are working together to strengthen interpretations of peace, reconciliation, capacity building, and church growth evangelism, said the Reverend Cooper. We believe that we can walk alongside our Rwandan brothers and sisters to learn and teach one another and be inspired and motivated by one another, so that the world never has to witness such a period of extermination ever again, Cooper said. Reverend Cooper is referring to the genocide that ripped Rwanda apart in 1994. Rwanda was left virtually with no infrastructure and an impoverished and traumatized population. Reverend Cooper shared how PCUSA is involved in two projects in Rwanda as the nation continues to rebuild its educational and economic systems. Through the Presbyterian Church's mission partner, support has been provided to the Protestant Institute of Arts and Sciences. The school strives to produce graduates who will contribute to Rwanda's spiritual, intellectual, and social economic life, training students in theology and religious studies, education, development studies, and environmental studies. PCUSA has directly supported the work of Reverend K. Day at the school, where Reverend Day has been a lecturer in English and practical theology, preparing students for pastoral ministry. Reverend Cooper wrote of visiting a community in the Shu parish of Rwanda. Community members are receiving funds from the Presbyterian Church USA Self-Development of Peoples Program in partnership with the Presbyterian Church of Rwanda to establish and maintain a savings and loans program. This program has enabled individuals to purchase cows, plant bananas and beans, open a small shop, construct a building for rental, and has paid school fees and sent children to universities. Reverend Cooper writes, "You had to be there to feel the humble pride and hope in the room. Most of these individuals cannot get loans from banks, have been able to begin income-generating activities through the program. When we donate to the One Great Hour of Sharing special offering at Easter, we share God's love with people experiencing need. A portion of the special offering supports the PCUSA ministry, participating in the empowerment of economically poor, oppressed, and disadvantaged people, seeking to change the structures that perpetuate poverty, oppression, and justice. Our thanks to Reverend Paula Cooper for her assistance with our World Kitchen Rwanda project."
Hi, I'm Barbara Rusterholtz.
And I'm Paul Rusterholz.
And we traveled to Rwanda in 2012 to visit Rosine Eugenie, who had lived with us in La Crosse for 15 months. While we were visiting Rosine and her family in Rwanda, she took us almost everywhere in the country. Over a 12-day period, we visited 2 national parks and a number of genocide memorials, as well as a lot of good family time around the house.
Our first trip to Rwanda was memorable, a wonderful trip, and we sort of assumed that it would probably be the only trip that we would make to Rwanda. But we did say that we might come back if Rosine got married. Well, in 2018, Rosine got married.
Can you share with us one experience that helped you to gain some insight into the Rwandan people?
The Rwandan people are committed to reconciliation. They're determined to build themselves a future that's not based on racial or tribal divisions. In 2012, we visited a women's sewing cooperative that was represented by Rosine. There were a dozen women from a variety of religious and ethnic backgrounds who worked together side by side making clothing. They were committed to making their new society work. In 2018, we visited a new art museum and studio, and one of the things that caught our eye was the mural on the outside of the building, which is a picture of the president, Paul Kagame, and a very inspiring quote from him. "We want to make the kind of progress that will make Rwanda unrecognizable to those who define us by our tragic history. The future we are building is the future Rwandans deserve."
And when we returned in 2018, Rosine had a new job. She was no longer working with the cooperatives, but she worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the capital. And one of her main responsibilities was to organize visits of delegations from other Southern Hemisphere countries who came to learn how Rwanda had made such amazing progress in reconciliation as well as economic recovery.
So what surprised you about Rwanda when you visited?
One of the things that surprised me was the family home. It was incredibly spacious and comfortable, and it was in a new development. They had built this home after their return from exile in Burundi during the genocide, thanks to some generous loans from the new government at that point. The house had a large living area, 4 bedrooms, 2 full baths, though not always hot water you could count on.
One of the things that surprised me was all the hills. We had read that Rwanda is called the land of 1,000 hills, but still it was surprising. Just driving around Kigali, the capital city, it was up, down, up again, down again. The only flat places are the airport and the soccer stadium. And there were a lot of bicycles. That's not so unusual, but seeing how bicycles were used to transport things was amazing. I saw an incredible variety of things loaded onto bicycles for transportation.
Well, and lastly, I just want to ask what your favorite food was in Rwanda.
I think the favorite food is the one we're going to prepare in a little while. Although the family lives in a spacious modern house, the cooking of the home meals was done primarily in an outdoor kitchen over charcoal-fired burners. I had brought some wild rice to share a local product with them. So on the last day, I got a chance to work in the outdoor kitchen to prepare a wild rice pilaf, which was then one of the dishes on the table at our final meal before we left. At dinner, there were always 5 or 6 dishes lining the center of the table, and each person would help themselves to whatever they wanted. The Isombe, which we're going to make in just a minute, was Rosine's favorite. We will now move on to the kitchen and show you how to make it. So we're going to be making a Rwandan dish called Isombe. It's one that you'll find on the table almost every night, probably in many Rwandan homes. We're going to start with 2 cups of water. And to that, we're going to add about 2 teaspoons of this soup base. You can use just plain water, but I think it's nicer with a little bit of extra flavor so that you have like a beef broth. You could also use canned beef broth. And we're going to bring that to a boil. Okay, so now our broth has come to a boil. And we're going to add about 8 ounces of chopped kale. Quantities are not important. In Rwandan cooking, people just make it, and they don't measure for the most part. They just kind of do it by instinct. So, but we gave you some quantities so that you have a sense of what to do. So we're going to add this chopped kale to the broth. It'll look like it's not really in it, but as it cooks, the volume of the kale will decrease greatly, and it'll all fit. So in Rwanda, they probably wouldn't use kale. I'm not sure they grow kale there. They would use cassava leaves, which are hard to come by in this country. So kale seems to be a pretty good substitute. So we're going to put this back on the stove and let it cook for about 10 minutes. And the kale will soften up and it'll decrease in volume, and then we'll add some other vegetables. So the kale has softened up quite a bit, takes up a lot less room than it did before. And now we're going to add the spinach. I'm going to stir that in so that it gets down to where the hot water is. And the eggplant. This is 1 medium eggplant diced. The leeks, chopped leek, thinly sliced leek. A little bit of chopped celery and garlic. And we'll put all this back on the stove, and you'll be surprised to see how much this also cooks down after we let this cook for a while. So this has all been simmering for a while, and you can see that the veggies have cooked down quite a lot. And now we're going to add some peanut butter. This is what binds the whole thing together. If you have a peanut allergy, you can also use soy flour, and it'll have a similar effect. So I'm going to mix the peanut butter with a little bit of the liquid from the stew so that it'll all mix in together a little more quickly. So we'll stir the peanut butter and the liquid together. It gives us a little bit softer mixture to put in. And then we'll add the tomatoes and the oil. The original recipe that I got from Rosine's mother calls for palm oil, which is not readily available in this country and is also, I think, not particularly one of the more healthy oils. So I think peanut oil is a good substitute. It matches the other flavors that's in here. And so stir all this together a little bit. And we're going to put it back on the stove. So here is our stew. It's been simmering uncovered for a little while now to get some of the liquid to evaporate, but it looks like everything is well cooked and ready to be seasoned and taken to the table. So we'll add the seasonings are very basic, salt and pepper. So we'll do some of that. Stir it in, and it's ready to eat. So our isombe is ready for the table. And we're going to put some in a bowl. If we were serving an entire meal to a family in Rwanda, the food would be lined up in bowls along the center of the table, and this would just be one of several dishes that would be available that night. I'd suggest that with this you could serve rice or roasted potatoes would be things that were typical, and grilled chicken or fish would also be very typical of a Rwandan meal. And so then you have really quite a complete meal if you have those three things. So, bon appetit.